So I graduated from my undergrad in December of 2019. It's June 2020 now. And so when I ended my undergraduate, that is also when I ended my undergraduate research. And so it was about a year and a half, year and a half, I'm not even sure, of undergraduate research. And in this video, I want to talk not all about my undergraduate research. I'm not going to talk the details of my undergraduate research, but I want to talk about why I'm glad I did it. Hopefully, if you're watching this, you'll be able to take something away if you're about to be an undergraduate or you are an undergraduate and you're considering if you want to do research. And so it may help you decide if research is a thing that you want to do in your undergrad, if it's worth your time. For me, and I'll get into the details of this, I learned a lot over my research. And so I'm going to talk about a lot of the things that I learned over my undergraduate research, which is why I'm glad I did it, which is why it was very worth it for me. But I must say my experience is unique. I'm sure your experience will most definitely be different than mine, at least a little bit or a lot. Experiences will vary. I think there's a number of factors that contribute to whether your undergraduate research is successful or not, and how much you learn and how much is worth your time. One of those, I think, is the amount of effort you put in. I definitely think the amount of effort you put in is proportional to how much you get out. So if you put more effort in, you're most likely going to get a lot out. You're going to learn a lot, and it's going to be really worth your time. And of course, I recognize there's probably other factors too. I mean, for one, I'm a white guy, so I recognize that that may help me. And so it may be different, your experience, if you are not like me. I guess when it comes to like color of my skin, I know that there's racism and there's people encounter issues. And I've heard from friends of mine from my school that I graduated from that had troubles, as being a girl at some schools. And so I recognize that you might have more issues than I encountered. And so I'm going to talk about my experience and my experience only. So take what you can from this video. I think it's a good example of someone who has learned a lot in research and had a successful time in research in undergrad where it was really, really worth it. And so I'm going to share the things I learned, which just on their own, the things I learned, you could even take away if you're just not an undergrad or whatever, grad student or whoever you are. The things I learned are actually really, really useful, really, really cool things. So the first big thing is if you're given data, and I know not everyone in research is given data, but if you're given something, but in my case, actual data, like data sets, and you're given that, is to understand it as much as you can right off the bat. In my undergraduate research in the beginning, it took me quite a while to actually really dig into my data and sort of play around with it, look at it in different ways, different plotting options, and different variables and different data sets, just to see like what it all means and what's all there. In doing so later on, I realized that that was a really, really important thing for me to do, is because eventually you're going to have to understand all of it, especially if you're going for a PhD or a master's, you're doing a thesis on your research. You need to be able to understand everything. At least I think so. You need to be able to understand all the different facets of your data and your research. And if you leave anything, untouched and not looked at, I just think that's a really not a good thing. To make sure that you understand what's really happening. So looking at your data in different ways is very, very important. In my experience, I found that it was one of the most important things that I did eventually. It's because I needed to understand everything. And so doing that was very, very important. And I learned eventually to ask the questions of like, do I understand what I'm seeing? Do I understand all my data, what it means? Like fundamentally, like why is my data this way? Is there an explanation that I could come up with right off the bat, or with help from my advisor or from looking at textbooks or whatever, thinking about it? Can I figure it out? It seems to me that that was very, very valuable, just being able to figure out how everything works and different explanations for why the data was that way. That was also important for me because I did write a paper at the end of my undergrad research, not because I needed to, just because I wanted to. And being able to understand everything was important because I just put everything into that paper, all the different explanations for all different things, and I felt really good about it, being able to understand everything. But it wasn't a thesis, and I didn't need to understand everything, because if you're doing a thesis, obviously I haven't gotten there yet, but I'm pretty sure you need to be able to understand everything because you have no idea what they might ask, what they might have you explain. So you need to understand everything. And so that's a really important skill, really important thing to be able to do. And another thing, understanding your research area is really important in the beginning. So if you're entering a new research area, like a very new research area that's very different for you or very new for you, or just a different area in the same sort of subject, being able to understand the background, which will involve, reading textbooks, probably reading papers really is a big thing. Being able to read papers and know where the current research is at and what projects are currently going on. Knowing where the research at today is really, really important. But being able to read papers definitely is a really important skill for helping you understand your research areas, but also in general in your research. If you ever have an issue or you're having trouble understanding something, there might be a paper out there that did it already or explained it. So just look around. Being able to look around and read papers is a really important skill I've found. So the second big skill that I came upon was being able to be self-reliant in my research. It's important to be able to rely on your professors and your advisors, but you need to be able to solve problems on your own. If you're encountering small and big problems, you need to be able to solve the problems on your own because eventually you won't have an advisor. You'll need to solve these problems on your own. I mean, sometimes you may be able to get help from other people, but a lot of times I think you just need to be able to solve problems on your own. The little problems, especially if you're having coding issues or just a little thing that you don't understand, if you can find it on your own, try to understand it on your own without going to your advisor, I learned that was really, really useful. In my undergrad research, near the beginning, I relied on my advisor a lot for even simple questions, coding problems especially. I mean, I was learning coding for the first time, so it's understandable. But I didn't realize until later that it's like, oh, I could solve all these problems, most of these problems on my own, just with enough work or just with a quick Google. I don't need to email my professor to figure out how to figure out this for loop or something. I can figure it out on my own. So I definitely used my advisor as a crutch a lot. And, eventually I did get better for sure. Like I got just better at coding and better at research just in time. But also I realized that, I really can solve these problems on my own. It's like I have textbooks, I have online resources, just a bunch of forums where people probably had the same issue that you did. And even just you use documentation or just play around until you figure it out, or just figure it out yourself. I mean, I learned that I was really able to do that. In the beginning of your undergrad research, I think you could probably get away with using your advisor a lot more than maybe you should later on, just because it's the beginning of your research. Like, I don't regret doing that. It's just that I learned eventually that, so, hey, I could do these on my own. So in my experience, at least at this point, I think I really should only go to my advisor for problems, when all the other resources fail. If I can't figure it out from textbooks, from papers or online resources, or just on my own, then I could probably consider going to my advisor and be like, okay, no, I can't solve this problem. I need your help. But of course, if you need that help, definitely go to your advisor. Don't just sit there and wallow in your own inability to be able to fix a problem. Go to your advisor. But there's nuance in this. Definitely go to your advisor for sanity checks. Make sure if you got some result, and you're just like, does this even make sense to you? And guidance just in your research, like where do I go next? Other things as well, that you definitely want to utilize your advisor for. But when it comes to just solving problems, giving it a shot, giving it your all, really, before you go to your advisors. At least in my experience, I learned that was a good idea. And even to share an idea or to ask where to find other resources. So my third point is that in doing my research, I learned that I actually like it. I actually enjoy doing research and that I'm good at it. So I think that's a reason why a lot of people should try research, just to see if you like it. I mean, I think you're not going to be good at it in the beginning, so that's not really the reason. But to see if you even like it in general, I think that's why it's important for somebody to try research, even just for a summer or just for a semester, just to see if it works for you. Because for me, it led to me deciding to want to do a PhD, which is why in August I'm going to go to grad school, and eventually, hopefully, I'm going to get a PhD. And so it's important for me, my undergrad research, it was important because it led to that decision. And so it led to me to realize, oh, I like this. I want to continue doing it. I want to go to get a PhD where I'm going to do more and more research. You don't want to decide that you want to go for a PhD or a master's and not know if you like research or not. Getting your feet in the water and trying it out, see if you like it, I think is important, because you don't want to go for something like a master's or a PhD, especially if you don't even know if you like it or not. So the fourth thing for me is I learned a lot. I learned a lot of skills and techniques that I otherwise wouldn't have learned. So first off, coding. I learned a lot of coding. In particular, C++, especially. It was actually my first introduction to coding, so that's probably why my first summer of research wasn't too productive, is because I was trying to learn how to do C++, and that was really difficult, just figuring out what everything meant, how to use command line and whatnot. It taught me quite a bit about coding and other programs that I used for my research that I'll probably end up using again. Different techniques, like Monte Carlo techniques is a thing that I did quite a bit, which I should hopefully be able to use again one day. And so that was a massive skill that my research helped me with. And then a second skill is generally how to perform research well, I think. Obviously we'll see. That's why one of the reasons why I'm so excited to go to grad school is just to see if I were to start research again, how good am I at it? I think I'm pretty good. I think I know how to go about it pretty well. And so I think that was a really good reason why I did undergrad research. Why I'm glad I did it is because I'm glad to be able to go into grad school having already done research. And so I know my way around, and I know, what to do really. So a third skill, like I've said, understanding what I'm given and being able to be self-reliant. Those are some skills that obviously are important for more than just research. Grad school in general, and probably my future career, being able to understand everything that I'm given. That's an important skill. And there's also another skill, which is writing reports. And in my going for a PhD in grad school, I'm sure I'm going to be writing all sorts of reports. And so it's good that I decided to write a paper, which is like 50 something pages, in LaTeX, just a common sort of coding sort of way to make a paper. Having experience in that, I think, was really important, and so that'll come pretty easy when I have to do it, however many times I have to do it, especially with a thesis, which I'm sure will be probably more than 50 pages. And another thing I learned was to check my results. This is something I do all the time now. When I'm doing something, I always check my results. I check my simulations. I check to make sure everything's accurate, even the little things. Just make sure everything makes sense, and I can compare it to something exact. Of course, this is such a very important thing to be able to do, especially in your future career. And when I'm doing a PhD, I need to be able to prove definitively that my results are accurate and that my conclusions are good. Yeah, that was a great skill. And also, last one I think is asking lots of questions. In the beginning of my research, I did not ask a lot of questions. I'd go in, I'd have so many questions passing through my mind of like when my advisor would explain something to me, and then I'd go out and I'd be like, I don't understand really what he said. Asking all sorts of questions. Like I just learned to just throw all sorts of questions at my advisor, just like, oh, what do you mean? What does that mean? What's all this about? I don't know what this is. They won't, if they're a good advisor and a good person, they will not get annoyed if you ask questions. And also a big thing, take notes. That's one of the things I learned. It's like when you're in talking to your advisor, take friggin' notes, because it took me so long to do that. So finally, to reiterate my main points and the things I learned, one is understanding my data and what I'm given, and the research area. Understanding everything, is very, very important. And asking questions too. Came later, but it's important here too. Ask all sorts of questions of your advisor. If you can't figure out something on your own, or even if you're just talking to your advisor about something, ask them all sorts of questions, because that's important to be able to understand your research area, your data, all sorts of things. Understanding is super important, I've found. So being able to be self-reliant for sure is a big skill that I learned, and hopefully will improve upon even more. That's a big one. And then I learned that I liked it, which is important. Being able to like it, is, is super important, because then you might decide, hey, I want to continue doing this. Or if you don't like it, then you'll decide, hey, I'm okay. I won't decide to keep doing this. And I learned a lot of skills. Some of the ones I just restated here, but other ones I said, like coding and being able to make reports, and all these smaller skills that are really, really important to be able to utilize, especially if you're going into more research, going into grad school, or into a career that you may use those skills. So your experience may vary, and it probably will, and I'm sure there's a number of different factors that go into whether your undergraduate research is successful or not. But one of the big ones, I think, and a saying that I think applies here, is you get out what you put in. So if you put in a bunch of work and enthusiasm about your research, I think you're going to get a lot out of it. And if you don't do those things, then I really don't think you can expect to learn all the things that, like I did. If I didn't put in work and I didn't put in enthusiasm about it, I don't think I'd be where I am today. I don't think my undergraduate research would have been as successful as it was. So thanks for watching. I wanted to say in the beginning, I keep forgetting, but my name is Sam, if you're wondering, because my channel name is not my name anymore. So if you enjoyed the video, if you could give it a like, that would be really helpful. And if you like videos like this, I make vlogs like this and also more physics, math type videos, which you can check out. If that interests you, you could subscribe. And so here's a video if you, am I looking the right way? No. Here's a video if you are interested, and you can subscribe if you want as well. And yeah, that's all I have for this video. Bye.